So it's my real privilege today to get to chat with Ghada Zubian, who is someone I met 5 or 6 years ago when she was at Wellcome Trust. And Ghada will tell you more about herself, but the thing that has always inspired me about what she's done is her story over time, how she took her PhD and basically fundamental cellular molecular biology and has turned it into an opportunity to influence AMR work around the world, primarily based in Europe, but a strong international theme here. So, Ghada, welcome and thank you for making time to visit with us today.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you.
So just give me a quick recap about you. Once upon a time, you got into this area by what? Once upon a time, you were born in Lebanon. I know that part, so go from there.
Yes, I'm born and bred in Lebanon. Spent over 25 years in Lebanon as an agriculture engineering in the first instance, master's in animal science, and really a passion in science, which is very interesting when you are in Lebanon in the middle of a war. You have a lot of challenges. You have your the normal life as you conducted, and really working in science and doing a master's in science in Lebanon in the war was not really a walk in the park, because we're talking about challenges in funding, what we could afford, what we couldn't, restriction on import due to war, regional, national level, and different players, including your own country, John. Power cuts, concern about safety and explosion going here and there. So in a way, conducting science becomes an existential problem. You know, you build your own infrastructure in a lab, you plug pipette at night, you autoclave when electricity is there. But science and politics becomes really close because anything in Lebanon is influenced by politics. And I guess I was a bit privileged that my household was very much active politically. So that was sort of like the norm, bread and butter for us. But nevertheless, I think it was a very interesting start that tested how much I am passionate about wanting to do science, and how the length to which I'm going to go to finish my master's and work a little bit in Lebanon and then land on the shores of Manchester in the UK for my PhD.
I didn't realize your master's degree was in animal health.
Yes, yes.
So because I got to know you in the human health side, but you've actually worked both sides of the puzzle. All right. So
yes.
So you went from a master's in animal health issues and a PhD in cellular biology of some sort, right? And got that. But then I believe from that you didn't go off to be an academic researcher. You did something really interesting next.
Yeah, I mean, I did the traditional postdocs and team lead in academia and in a spin-out. So I did all the way from basic, drug discovery, more target discovery, all the way to phase 1 clinical trial. So that was an interesting journey. But I found that actually I was really interested to what science can do outside the lab, outside the business, outside the cocoon of the academic sector. And I really wanted to see how I can amplify the experience that I had so far in animal health, but in human health, and seeing having a societal impact. So how do you bring science out there? And I think the opportunity of moving into a research organization like the UK Medical Research Council was really a good opportunity to test that. And I really owe it to MRC because the training that I got into looking at science and funding from that perspective, how you set strategies for research, how you engage with not only scientists, a range of stakeholders, but very much the science policy interface was starting to really become very attractive to me. And the area that I was put into was very much public health partnerships, originally in non-communicable diseases, but then after that in infectious diseases and AMR. And I think that sort of dynamic built more skills that may or may not have needed them before when I was in the lab. So I think it's through 9 years of being at MRC, and then lending eventually to working in infectious diseases and AMR. And at the time, AMR was very high on the agenda of the UK, with Dame Sally Davies being the CMO and pushing it up the agenda. I had the opportunity to lead on the AMR Cross Research Council initiative and set it up. And it was really the first time that 7 research councils across arts, social science, engineering, and biomedical science, human health came together to look at that problem, very much all the way from early stages down the translational path. And by doing that, and by bringing over 23 as well funder across the table with what we call UK AMR Funders Forum, I think the skills of working in partnership, bringing people to a topic that they may or may not have been interested in, was a really nice challenge to build my skills around.
Wow. So, and that was strictly across the multiple domains within the UK.
Yes,
Right.
this was for the cross-council initiative for this, but then we had the opportunity to have funding from the government for overseas development assistance, and it was an opportunity not to be missed. So we engage in what we call the Newton Fund and Grand Challenges Fund, and these are bilateral agreements with other countries around the world who are interested in similar topics. I was heavily engaged with China, with India, with Brazil, and South Africa primarily. But I think it was an opportunity where researchers from the UK and researchers from these countries developed topic for AMR mitigation and early stage development, as well as more advanced development across countries.
Yeah.
And of course, there was the European Joint Programming Initiative.
Yeah, you're going to need you to go, the JPI AMR work as well. But really quick, right. Newton was the collaboration between the UK and China. Is that right, if I remember correctly?
Newton was a model of bilateral agreement between countries that are on the DAC list, the low middle income countries list, and UK. And they had priority. So there were a range of countries.
It was more than one country. I think maybe the one that stuck in my head was Newton, was China. Grand Challenges, what was it? How did that work?
So it was more open and not to specific country, and it didn't have to be one country versus the UK, but it was a funding that would look at big challenges in the world, and AMR was considered one of the big challenges. So there was a funding that was awarded to the Research Council to identify the topic, and as such, announce calls for proposal for the research community to come. So some of the consortium had like partners from 4, 5, 6 countries on one massive grant, as well as the UK. It's just a little bit more open and more inclusive.
Okay. And so back to JPI AMR. First, you need to decode that acronym. And what is it? What is the JPI?
So it's Joint Programming Initiative for Antimicrobial Resistance, and it's a European entity that is one of the European Commission funding schemes. The appetite is to bring in the first instance some of the European countries around the table to tackle different challenges. So one of them was on AMR, another one was on water, on infectious diseases, dementia. So they had a range of these programs. UK had a seat at the table alongside 23 other countries. And now JPI AMR moved.
That's right there, the 23. So if I understand the concept of JPI correctly, the notion is a lot of countries in Europe might want to contribute to topic X, in this case, AMR. And any given country might say, well, we're not sure that the amount we can put into this by itself is enough, but we're actually going to put it all together and create a joint program across that space.
That's correct. I think it was the understanding that we are stronger together rather than individually, and we cannot cover everything ourselves. And would it be really good if you can connect researchers across different European countries and support them so that the type of research that they are doing is richer, more impactful, and really more relevant to that region? And it did start at a European level, but they moved to attract partners from other countries. So you do have other countries like South Korea, South Africa, India. Of course, you have Canada as well, and you have a range in Argentina. They are part of some of the funding mechanism.
So if I am Argentina, I could raise my hand to participate in JPI X. I could participate in JPI AMR if I wanted to.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. And it was really interesting because I think it brought at the heart of JPI that global outreach. And I do know now that they still have that appetite for having global influence. And this is really mainly that the European Commission and all its strategy coming forward is really how to position Europe as well in a global setting. And they do have some of the tools and mechanism to do so.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, the JPI AMR continues to be really active. There was a very important report recently, Christine Ardall's deep dive into thinking about poll rewards and what countries' views on that. So, but were you there at the creation of the JPI AMR, the JPI for AMR, and you were the UK voice at that table? Is that kind of what I'm understanding?
I was very early on, probably a few months into the JPI AMR. So it was part of the strategy, the first round, and then the refresher when it became a strategy with innovation. I think it was nice to see, it was amazing to be on the management board and see how different country comes with a different agenda of what they think they want to fund. And the amount of diplomatic relationship that you have to engage with to get to something that makes sense to someone to fund something that's useful.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a cool idea, and it's fun to see that one continuing to develop data, as I said. And then I know that at some point along here, you moved to Wellcome Trust. Tell me about that, because that's when you and I meet.
Yes. I mean, MRC was at the end of the day a UK research funder, and I had the appetite to move to something more global outreach. And the Wellcome Trust being an international philanthropy, it has a lot of independence politically, financially, but it has outreach in different parts of the world. And it was the right opportunity where a team was created. I mean, I started at Wellcome when the team was only 2 or 3 people, and then moved into that team getting larger and larger and becoming 17 and 18 individuals working across science and policy to tackle drug-resistant infection. And it was a nice model because science and policy interface was really very close. Partners and colleagues within the same team came from different backgrounds, took different languages, and the appreciation of science and policy was something that I really enjoyed greatly in my time at Wellcome.
Yeah, and that was the era of the Lord Jim O'Neill UK AMR review and the spinning up of CARB-X and the funding of Wellcome. So the things that you were involved with for Wellcome, I guess it would have included that. It's been a while; it's kind of blurry in my brain, but that's where CARB-X came into existence, and Wellcome was a big part of the initial version of CARB-X.
Yes, I joined when actually the first call for proposal was run by Wellcome because CARB-X did not exist as an entity to run it. And I just joined after that, and it was a matter of CARB-X becoming an entity, putting its governance and infrastructure on the ground, and starting to do the call for proposal to attract the SMEs. And even the accelerator model was very at a early stages, and we didn't have an accelerator at the time in Europe. So Wellcome took it upon themselves that in addition to being a funder, they'll be happy to set up an accelerator in Europe. And this is what my team did at the time. So I was overseeing that work, and a chunk of the portfolio of European SMEs, as well as the SME that we have in India, and providing a support beyond funding. So CARB-X does not follow fund and forget, right? But it gave that wraparound support to companies so that they do not fail just because a small company did not have access to good expertise, or good biochemist, or good PKPD, or a good modeler. So the accelerator walked the path with the company and exposed them to technical expertise, but above all as well to potential investors as well as potential policymakers. And I think this is a really invaluable type of support that CARB-X gave to the company so that they can deliver to the best of their capabilities without failing just because they are not your large pharma. And that model was really enjoyable. My team built a strong relationship with individual companies, and the partnership was really pretty strong.
Yeah. I saw a slide recently that CARB-X now has accelerators dotted around the globe, but this was back at the dawn of time when CARB-X was being initiated and the first projects funded, and people were figuring out, how do we do this? How do we create it? Now there are more than 90 projects funded over the past 5 years by CARB-X. Just amazing. Yeah. But Wellcome ultimately couldn't hold you. You moved on.
Yeah, I mean, I usually get a little bit itchy feet after 3 years anyway, but in this case, I was actually willing to stay a little bit more, but due to personal reasons and family reason, I had to be in and out of the UK. That was pre-COVID. And as such, I decided to leave Wellcome and become a consultant. And this is where actually I came across another very interesting organization, which is the ICARS, the International Center for AMR Research, where I am currently a consultant, but my role is very much head of partnerships and stakeholder engagement. And it feels that almost everything in my life has been really very useful to prepare me to what ICARS was going to be like. My animal health background, my human health background, my partnership science, policy, low middle income countries, the blood that run in my vein of being coming from the Lebanon and some low resource setting, I think really have prepared me for what I was just signing up myself to.
So tell us about ICARS. I mean, I've written a couple of times. I've written newsletters where I talked about job postings and stuff at ICARS. But give us the introduction to what ICARS is doing, and your roles and activities.
So ICARS is an initiative that was created by the Danish government. Their vision was very much that it's important to work in partnership with low middle income countries, ministries and government. And I think this is where the differentiation between maybe what I was involved in the past, and together we can co-create and co-develop solutions to help them advance national action plan.
Government to government.
It is government to government.
Okay.
But they created ICARS as an institution with the ambition that more donors will come and invest into this platform of ICARS, that it will be not only Denmark, but other donors as well, and that will become independent entity, which we are by the end of this month, and as such can attract donors from a multitude of organization, foundation, as well as government. And then the need and the gap was that a lot of the evidence generated to advance national action plans, which are the plans of country, in many places, they are not context specific. They are created in one part of the world, may or may not be relevant to other part of the world. So they're not context specific. they are not cost effective. Many of the research that's been done does not have the budget in it to say, well, is it worth doing? Is it worth, using a vaccine to reduce antibiotic use in fish? Is it? And then the other thing is that, is it sustainable? Is it something that after the research funding is taken away, I mean, is it something that the government wants to continue and roll out beyond the life of that project? And there was understanding that a One Health lens will be important, even if not every single project will have human, animal, and environment together. But the portfolio need to always keep an eye on the other sector in case there is an overflow from one sector to another. So ambition is, it's a platform, it's working with low middle income countries, ministry is developing, co-creating and co-developing solutions that are owned by the country. This is your solution. We are not telling you what to do. You may come with an idea that you want to reduce antibiotic use in hospitals. This is your idea. We will help you financially, but we will do as well is we will be providing technical expertise, capacity building, advocacy support. So I always call it, it's the public health accelerator.
Like that. Yeah.
It's taking that model and then putting it for other type of solutions.
But to play it back, the core twist here is that you're not giving people a cookbook. You might give them, help you share ideas or show them what others have done, but it's going to be their plan. It needs to be stuff that they should take information from X and Y and Z, but is this actually the right tool for you, for the budget you've got today, and to help create things that then become self-sustaining and that are actually worth doing. Yeah. So examples of that you want to, I mean.
Yeah. So far, there are two memorandum of understanding, one signed with Vietnam and one with Georgia, but they are present now in 10 countries across Southeast Asia, East Europe, Africa, and Latin America. The type of project are anything from how could you reduce collagen use in pig industry in Vietnam while still making it a sustainable business? Because, it's easy to come and say, hold it.
Right.
Yeah, but
you
the
still
farmer,
got to feed everybody. You still got to feed everybody. Right. Yeah.
Exactly. The farmer needs to think that this is the livelihood, and they're going to be very uncomfortable doing this. Mm-hmm. So this is something they would like to test. They want to see what the risks are. They want to see the cost benefit of this. Yeah. Another entity in Georgia, which is a project, these are already started, so I'm comfortable talking about them, is at the ICU unit, how much antibiotics do you use and what are the guidelines for using antibiotic just in case you have infection. And now what ICARS is doing is having a very interesting partnership with the Ministry of Health, with 10 hospitals, as well as with WHO Europe, taking some of the stewardship tools that they have developed and implementing them in this hospital to see how much these tools are accepted by the staff, by the doctors, and as well sustainable, because the doctors are feeling very uncomfortable risking the life of patients, and they want to test it, and they want to test it with expertise. And we have key opinion leaders that ICARS provide to this project to make sure that all along the way, if there are some hiccups, we will work through them. So that's another interesting project starting in Georgia now. And we have a range in the African continent as well that are worth keeping an eye on, especially that we have a strong relationship and partnership with React Africa, which is one of the civil society that can really give us the outreach and opening doors to engagement with ministries.
Yeah. So are the doors open right now at ICARS if I'm the part of the Ministry of Health at country X, and I think this sounds cool, I can call you up and say, hey, let's talk?
Yes, definitely. I mean, at the moment we are getting 7 projects out of the door before the end of the year that we have been working and co-developing them for the last 6 to 8 months, because this is a process that's quite intense.
Fantastic.
And despite COVID, it was still possible. So very excited about that.
If you do anything despite COVID, I guess you did all this over the internet.
Yes,
Yeah.
most of it. They have been, because ICARS, though the headquarters is in Copenhagen, John, it's spread around the world. There's a lot of consultants. We have like 17 nationalities for 23 member of staff. So you can imagine we come with that richness of approaches and existing contact that we are building on. And I have to admit, the Danish embassies around the world have been of a great support, as well as some of the UK embassies who have really engaged with ICARS and supported the mission. So we are counting on friends and colleagues to open doors. But now that we have few examples of projects, I think it's suddenly the whole thing is organically growing now.
Yeah, it begins to get going. Well, if I listen to your story, I think that you have the words "I connect people" written across your forehead. Right? Right there. Yeah. Hi, I'm Gada. How can I connect you to somebody else that I know? Because the whole story, all the way through, is about one of building collaborations, and you've moved serially through different platforms, if you will, the UK MRC, Wellcome Trust, now ICARS, where you have the opportunity to use your science training and your personal experience to create empathetic connections that generate energy. Fair? Yeah. We get people who, sometimes in part of this community who are interested in, how do I do this for myself? How do I become Gada? What would be your advice to a young person who says, God, that sounds cool. How do I get there?
I mean, science really, John, over the current pandemic has shown that it's been a success for collaboration. I mean, science has pulled through, let's be honest. Mm-hmm. Scientists have talked together, public-private partnership. We've done our deal of the job. I think maybe politics and policymaker is a little bit something, a bit of a failure. But let's talk about science. And if someone is a scientist, is the willingness to listen, but as well to understand that partnership takes time, take a lot of investments, and it may not be rewarded on the short term. It's you're investing in the longer term. When I met you at Wellcome, for example, actually, I even met you before, but it was in a conference. But when I met you at Wellcome and worked closely with you and I moved on, and when we said goodbye to each other, I knew that wasn't the end of it. Right. Because that this is a person that has added into your life professionally and personally, and you want to continue. So you have to be open to sometimes not agreeing, not being on the same page, and yet be willing to listen and invest time, not only when you need it. Because I think that's the failure that sometimes these research come to push people together in an artificial situation because there is money out of it. But actually the investment needs to be because you want to come together. And then when the money comes, then you have a very strong relationship and trust that's already laid down that you can build on. So it's a lot of listening, patience, flexibility and openness to know that everything may not be the way other people see the world. And to be honest, to be fair to ICARS and to the Danish government, the whole process has been a learning process as well for them, because they have seen how interaction with different countries have enriched the way they see partnership. There's always that tendency by funders from high income country to think they're going to help poorer country. I don't think there is a help there. It's a partnership. There's a two-way system where your presence in their country is a privilege to give you access to knowledge that you wouldn't have done it otherwise. Yeah. And as such, it's looking first at what is needed and choosing the best path while respecting other people's needs. So It's an interesting balance between social skills and scientific knowledge and
Yeah.
scientific skills.
Yeah, but I think if I take you as a case example of how to have such a career, you have a deep technical insight in a particular area, some animal health knowledge, some cell biology, and that could just as easily been public health epidemiology, or it could have been some other area. But you started off with a technical area where you were strong, and you leveraged that to move into the broader area of building and leading collaborations, and you were able to use other experts to fill in the parts that you didn't know. Is that a fair summary of kind of how you've done
It
it?
is. It is. So I definitely have understanding of how science is done at a human and animal level, drug development with some public health, but I am a generalist, and I'm a generalist that's able to mobilize technical expertise where needed, but above all, connecting the dot, connecting the dot of what happens around you may or may not be something that every single technical expert want to do because they are busy in their own field and their own area of research. So I think it's fair to say that people like me are needed. And that when we're talking about challenges that are at a national and global level, you do need some of these skills. But I think everybody will really benefit from investing a portion of their time into partnership and collaboration building.
Yeah, and I'm just really struck here by the opportunity that things like JPI, AMR, and ICARS, they may have a home base in Europe, but don't think of them as being limited to Europe. And I don't think that I've had fully appreciated particularly the global scope of JPI, AMR. I think I kind of knew that, but you've really reinforced for me that these programs, everybody can play, and you'd love to connect globally, and there are reasons to bring people together regionally and globally in this fashion. Fantastic. Wow. Cool. Well, what have we not covered that we need to talk about today? Are there any other themes that you'd like to pick up on? I mean, I've enjoyed every bit of this, and it's been, I know that you've told me parts of your story in the past, and we've worked together, but that's, this idea of a whole career and how you invest your time, I think, is really interesting, and I've enjoyed hearing this bit from your perspective. How about if I do it this way? What's been the most fun?
The most fun is actually meeting people along the way and taking them with you on the journey. That's been fun. Fun to be able to when you want to discuss areas of interest, you have people you can do it with. And it's really amazing that despite the pandemic, we're still connected. I really think the power of connection between individual, whether it is for science or beyond, is important. And it sort of break all the boundaries between countries, between culture. And I think that's really crucial. The idea that we can sit there in our little geographical location and let the world pass by, I think it's a fake notion, I guess.
Yeah.
Someone who doesn't believe too much in borders and nationalities.
Yeah. Yeah. In a way, that's been your project, actually, to erase borders, if you will. I mean, it really has been to bring people together. Well, fabulous. I want to say thank you. This has been such fun to hear the tour, and I love what you're doing right now with ICARS. I mean, it's nice to have a deep dive on how that's coming together, and I look forward to seeing lots of interesting projects happen there. There seems to be such a strong global push right now for countries, not just the U.S. and Europe, to get involved in stuff. And I was reading the number of national action plans is actually continuing to go up. I mean, it's fabulous to see how all this has spun up. So thank you for what you're doing, and I look forward to seeing you in the future at some face-to-face antimicrobial jamboree, maybe in 2022, COVID permitting. We're grateful for the internet, but it's time to start seeing people.
Thank you for inviting me. Really enjoyed it. Thank you, John.
Wow, what fun to get to visit with Gada today. Thank you, Internet, for making that possible. And if you look below, there's a whole lot of links to the topics we covered during the chat today, please take time to dig through all that. And as always, like, comment, and subscribe for more. Thanks for listening.